afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and a very warm welcome to this CIBSE Intelligent Buildings webinar. We're going to be discussing intelligent buildings, but very much with the emphasis on a focused practical implementation, and we're going to be looking primarily at the digital technology and the ICT to support a business strategy, and it's for a major campus of university buildings. So this event is organised in conjunction with the CIB Commission W098. My name's Peter McDermott and I specialise in building controls and smart systems integration at Mott MacDonald, which is a global consultancy business. And I'm chairing this afternoon's session. We have two speakers waiting in the wings. Steve Hipwell, who is Associate Director of IT Programme Management at Birmingham City University, and Matt Majedi, who is the Chief Technical Architect. So they're going to do most of the talking. We'll have two half-hour sessions and then a Q&A session after the two presentations. So on behalf of the CIBSE Intelligent Buildings Group, I'd just like to thank you for making the session your top priority in what is no doubt a very busy day today. And I'm referring to the Intelligent Buildings Group. This is a well-established group within CIBSE. We've been going for well over 10 years now, and we explore the various facets of the intelligent building and involve a wide range of people. So we've got participants from, we've got academics, consultants, manufacturers, systems integrators, architects, all representing different facets of the intelligent building. And it's well worth getting involved in the group. So if you're interested, please get in touch through the CIBSE website. And as I say, this event is organised in conjunction with CIB, who is the World Buildings Council for Research, Working Group 98. So what we're doing is really just focusing the challenge of delivering an intelligent university campus. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Steve Hipwell, who's the Associate Director of IT Programme Management from BCU, and he's going to give you an insight into the university's approach to developing and delivering intelligent campus programs. Then we're going to have Matt Majedi, who's the Chief Technical Architect, who's going to discuss the university's IT strategy and how they've set about developing that campus and developing a technology architecture that supports it. As I say, each presentation is going to be about 30 minutes, and we'll propose to keep the Q&A session to the end. So if you want to post your questions in the chat, we'll try and pick up, and I think we've had a few come in already. So let's get started. I'll ask Steve Hipwell, can you give us your presentation? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for the opportunity to talk and share what we've been doing at BCU over the last 10 years or so in terms of our campus development. So I'll give you a brief history of the last decade. This building on the right was our first major scheme, so it's called Parkside. It was almost by chance that we developed it, because we did have another scheme underway. We bought the land, and then we found out that the HS2 line ran straight through the middle of it. So we had to abandon that scheme and start afresh. But as with everything, it also afforded us some opportunities to do things differently and learn from what we'd already been doing on the planning for that first scheme. So I'll talk about our schemes, and then also our approach and how we've developed it, and what smart campuses mean to us, and also what we've done, what we've actually implemented, how and why, and then what's gone well, and with all of these things, what hasn't gone so well and some of the challenges we faced, and then the opportunities and threats that we foresee. I'll show you, I'm just sitting opposite quite a big building scheme that we've got underway at the moment, so I'll show you that scheme shortly as well. So in the write-up for this presentation, I think it mentioned £260 million. We're a little bit shy because it's actually been £350 million and counting. It's been quite an aggressive programme in that we've built nearly 10 buildings. We've done a lot of estates refurb work, which has also involved looking at our systems, the intelligence within our systems, and spanning that out across the campus. So that's also been ongoing in parallel with these bigger building schemes. And the latest scheme that we're developing at the moment, and we're going to launch in 2022, is STEAM House. So that's really exciting, and putting the arts into the STEM subjects. It's incubator space, maker space, there'll be commercial, SME space there as well. Yes, so I've just seen in the chat. So this is the Bradshaw Hall in the Conservatoire. That's one of our buildings that we opened in 2017. That's a 480-seat auditorium. So there's lots of technology in there and dependencies around technology that had to be factored in. This is the STEAM House, an artist's impression of it. So this is what it looks like on the picture. And I don't know if you can see that, but that's the actual site. So we're working on that at the moment. And I've got a good view from this window so I can see what's going on. So, I mean, how did we develop our approach then to delivering intelligent buildings? Well, back in 2008, 2009, we started as an IT department, or some of us getting involved in these big build schemes the university wanted to embark on at the time. And one of the hot topics was, what is intelligence and what is an intelligent building? What do we want to implement in terms of the technology in these buildings? So after much consultation and discussion with some of the consultants that we had on board at the time, and amongst ourselves and within the wider sector, we kind of were quite surprised in the IT department that the building management systems and the security integration systems and things like that seemed to be quite closed to us. We were used to working with business systems that were starting to open up more and more and use open protocols and web services and things like that to make them interoperable and not siloed. So we found that what we wanted to do was bring the building management systems and the security systems and estate systems into the fold of a wider network that could be queried, that was more transparent and visible. And our primary interest wasn't so much about the utility of some of these functions, it was more about gleaning data and then using that for things that we wanted to have insights into within the university, which I'll talk a little bit more about as we move on. So we're very interested in interoperability of building management systems, security systems with business systems. Matt, who's our chief technical architect, has got far more knowledge about this than me, and we'll talk about it. But what we tried to do was integrate all of those systems together through a piece of middleware software, which is, if you think of it like a big adapter or software plug that can plug in different protocols that systems use. We concentrated on open architectures. We want everything on the same network, and we wanted to be able to orchestrate all of those systems to create useful workflows and also take data and to have that data exposed as well so that we could extract it for business intelligence. So that's a kind of overview of some of the technical themes and principles that we were aiming at. But on the other side, there's also the project structures and governance. So it was quite a learning curve for us to move into working with construction firms and on construction programs as an IT department. we were quite green. So to kind of marry up and coordinate our activities with the construction programme was a real learning curve. And it's still a learning curve, to be honest, but we've learned quite a bit over the last 10 years or so. But that is definitely part of the intelligence. Excuse me. So to be able to make sure that construction programs are coordinated with the IT deliverables, and that the university also understands its obligations towards making sure that everything is packaged and timed in the right way to make the best out of that delivery, and work collaboratively with the main contractor, M&E contractors, etc., and that subcontract chain. So what intelligence have we implemented and why? So the security integration system and building management systems all on one network, which was a big move away from what we'd done previously, and we were almost guided down the route of having our building systems on a separate network when we started on this decade-long development of the schemes that we've developed. And we wanted to resist that and have everything on one network so we could see the data more easily and also administer it and understand it. We have done things like put workflows in. So for example, with our access control system, if a door is forced, then a camera can pan tilt zoom, if there is one in that area, onto that door. We can up the record rate, we can hear the storage in the data center, we can send alerts and all those kinds of things. So that kind of functional utility. But again, what we were more interested in doing was looking at that data. And that has really come into its own of late with COVID, which I'll talk more about in a bit. We also wanted to develop BIM and CAFM. And in the first years, we kind of confused the two, or the functionality and the facility that sat within the two, to be quite honest. We had a BIM manager come in around 2012 who did a lot of excellent work in developing BIM for us, and really started to explore how BIM could fit in with the rest of the university systems. So we worked with Matt and myself and others to help develop that. And also through that work, we kind of started to look at CAFM systems and what they could offer. And we have implemented a CAFM system, but it still needs quite a lot of development. And there's a lot of potential there to develop it much further and integrate it much further. We would say that audio-visual equipment is part of the estate and facilities nowadays. We have something like 550 rooms with audio-visual equipment in them, and they range from just general teaching rooms and meeting rooms where the AV is quite standard, out to the Bradshaw Hall, or we've got a facility called the Hive where it's really specialist, and that is quite difficult to administer. So what we do, we use some remote monitoring software and system to see what's up and what's down, its kind of state, the preventative maintenance, usage times and patterns and things like that. And that's really handy at the moment where we've got a very limited presence on site, and we want to rotate our IT staff as well on site to build in resilience with the current situation considered. We have Wi-Fi across our sites, as you would expect. What we've also been doing for many years is using it for as a way of measuring kind of occupancy. So we pull stats from it to look at who's actually logging on through the access points to give us some idea of utilisation. And on its own, that isn't of great use, but aggregated and collated with other information, it really is part of a much more informed picture. We have had timetabling and attendance monitoring systems for some years. We've just upgraded our timetabling and attendance system. They talk to one another and integrate so that when a student comes to a class, they have to badge in, or their lecturer records them on an application, which is easily accessible. And then we can measure attendance and things like engagement, which is a really important measure to us as a university. And we can also look at interventions as well from that point as required. This all feeds into our business intelligence. So we like to plug our systems or extract data from our systems and use something called Power BI to visualize and present that data, which goes down well with execs and lots of other audiences as well. So we can actually visualize what we're doing and explain it in a visual way to people. This session's on Teams. Lots of people are using Teams, Zoom, and other platforms. We're no exception. So a lot of our teaching now is across Teams. Most of our meetings are on Teams, and we rolled that out really, really quickly. And part of the reason that we could was because we had an infrastructure that we could roll out from, and teams that were geared to deliver projects and the like, and technical teams that worked together to deliver that kind of technology quickly. We've also been working with Windows Virtual Desktop, which is a way for us of streaming software down to a device. So in the past, we've been quite restricted in that we've got software on PCs in labs, for example, and if there's only a certain suite of software on that PC in that lab, then only certain teaching can happen in that space. Where with Windows Virtual Desktop applications, we can then reconfigure that room effectively from a software perspective so that we could teach different courses on it, which is very freeing, if you like, and also we can scale then our facilities in a different way. Virtual learning environment, so we have a system called Moodle. Most of our content goes up onto Moodle. We have students from over 100 different countries. We've got operations in China, Vietnam, India, the Middle East, and we've got students placed across the world at various times. So it's really important that they can get hold of that content and they can work when they want on demand and do a number of different things through that platform. It's not just content. All of this kind of leads into the way that the physical and the virtual estate is becoming unbound, and the way that it's married up and used. So we have specialist facilities, for example, that we can demonstrate online. We can do sessions online, or we could do part of the session on campus and part of the session online to suit people, to suit need. And this idea of the campus is no longer just a physical thing. It's very much virtual. It's scalable and it's flexible. And some of the universities, I think, especially in America, have been looking at MOOCs, massive open online courses and things like that for a long time, and they've been really focusing on these areas. And part of what we want to do is look at and explore that relationship more in terms of what the campus looks like, and the marrying up of the physical and the virtual. These are some of our students. I think they're making a prototype for a robot. And of course, it's all about the students. It's all about our customers and who we're trying to serve. We're trying to marry up the IT and align it with the university strategy. We're very interested in engagement. It's a really important area for us to engage our students properly. Student experience is huge. So people come traditionally for maybe a campus-based type experience, but they also want the flexibility of being able to access material online whenever they want to. Students are coming, obviously, as well to be employable at the end of their courses and coming to study certain disciplines and subjects and to enhance their knowledge in that respect. So a big focus for us is employability. And to help us in that direction, we're moving away from ways of didactic teaching, so more chalk and talk, to project-based teaching, so giving students projects and actual pieces of work to produce. So it's more like a workplace and more what they would experience in industry. And some of our incubator and maker spaces reflects that and some of the direction that we're going in. Our buildings have to be safe and nice places to be and work and operate so that people can flourish and thrive. So well-being is a big aspect, and it's particularly interesting to listen to some of the talks that I've heard through this group on well-being and green buildings and things like that. And we're very interested in that area, and also with innovation and partnerships. And of course, all of this leads into productivity. So if you're in a really nice facility to work in and the atmosphere is good, then you'll probably be more productive. We also have to be mindful of compliance. So our attendance monitoring system, that feeds into our UKVI reports and things like that. So our systems play a big part in that. The data that we glean from them feeds into this reporting. COVID, I think, especially has taught us to be very agile. So we've had to change our operating models like everybody else or many other organisations. And these technologies have really helped us do that, to move to remotely. We don't always get it right, but we've been able to move to remote working and also some remote monitoring of our buildings really well. So I've talked us up quite a bit about what we've done well, what are some of the things that we haven't done well. We could look to do better. As I said, I think when we went into this, especially from the IT department's perspective, we were quite green. We were used to delivering IT solutions, IT projects and the like. So it's been a very big learning curve. There's a difference in culture between universities and main contractors, pretty obvious statement, but it's making sure that everybody understands what they're signed up to do and what their expectations are and what they're getting. And employers' requirements are obviously very important in that, right from the outset, building relationships, making sure that everybody who is involved needs to be involved and the expectation setting is done, and then it's regularly revisited as well. We've had quite a bit of issues with coordination, and I think this is partly due to that construction programs are geared towards construction. They're not so much geared towards IT, but the IT is becoming increasingly important in the actual operation of the building, if not critical. And it's certainly critical for us. So the weighting in the construction programs is not sufficient in my mind. And also because the IT packages are at the back of the program, if the program slips, they get pushed, and that means problems with quality, basically. So we find with coordination problems things like Wi-Fi access points not being in the wrong place, just fitted in a place which is convenient, and then we get signal problems, which leads to help desk calls and unhappy users. We've experienced similar issues with audio visual equipment and placement, and just making sure that these kind of requirements are properly captured and properly recorded in the right places. Keeping time is a big one. So construction programs, as I mentioned, in our experience, they often slip, which pushes other packages back. So it's something to be very mindful of. And then things like internal decision making and tempo. I think there's probably sometimes not the understanding that there should be, that once a building contract starts and you've got a contractor on site and 100 weeks or so to deliver a big scheme, that's a train and it's not stopping, unless something really is there to derail it. But we often get late changes or requests for late changes. So it's again, it comes back down to communication, expectation setting, making sure that everybody who should be involved is involved to explain the scheme and what's going on around it. Beneficial use to me means working IT, but it doesn't necessarily mean that handover of a big build. So that's another one to look at that we've put some emphasis on, and then also snagging and late changes, especially once a building's occupied. These are all things that we've learned from. So probably in the last 4 or 5 minutes of this presentation, I'll just look at some future opportunities. IoT, Internet of Things, will be quite huge in the way that we can profile and administer our smart buildings. So all of those different devices that sit within a building, whether it's a sensor or an access door reader or a camera. Just in answer to that, yes, we are doing PoE. So we do power over Ethernet for everything where we can. Just to answer that in the chat bar. We're also looking at things like air quality sensing. So we've done some research with LoRaWAN technology. We want to bring 5G into our buildings. We've got a research lab that's looking at that at the moment, but also we're looking at neutral network products, bringing different networks into some of our buildings, starting with Steamhouse. There's a lot of interest around the technology called Open RAN. We've just embarked upon a network refresh business case. So we're looking to introduce software-defined networking to control a lot of our network estate. Again, a lot of that is within buildings. Augmented reality, virtual reality and AI, we're experimenting with that on the research side. There's a move in terms of our thinking away from the 3 R's, as I mentioned, to the 3 C's of collaboration, critical thinking and creativity. And that kind of theme permeates everything that we're doing in our teaching and also obviously reflects in our estates. We see big opportunities around mobility, bring your own device, and some of these schemes which have been around for years and will just be driven by our users because they just will want to do that and are doing that. So with all of that, it comes some threats. We're really looking at our cybersecurity at the moment. So we just rolled out multi-factor authentication to help with that. We're reviewing our estate for cybersecurity with a view to becoming Cyber Essentials Plus accredited. Some of the weaker elements generally you find in networks around building management and the more construction or estates systems. So we're working closely on those areas. With IoT, it brings lots of opportunity. It also brings threat because you've got all of these different devices within a network that you then have to manage and make sure that they're secure. And the same applies with mobility. Again, we've rolled out MFA to help control that. We see it as a huge advantage to be able to enable these things, but as with anything, it's a balance and a trade-off. And there's always a tension between opening things up and closing them down. Hopefully we get it right most of the time, or at least we try. And I think that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed that, and hope you found it interesting. And if anybody's got any questions afterwards or wants to drop me an email and exchange thoughts, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, thanks, Steve. That's great, and we'll pick up the questions at the end. So now, if I can ask Matt to share his screen, and Matt is the Chief Technical Architect, and he's going to discuss how the IT strategy was implemented, how they set about developing the intelligent campus technology architecture. So thanks, Matt. Are you ready to go?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well, you're okay, and you're not too bored with this working from home concept, because I certainly getting bored, to be perfectly honest, but it's a new working model. It introduced lots of opportunities and challenges. Right, so my name is Matt Majedi. I'm Chief Enterprise Architect from Birmingham City University. I've been working with Steve for a very long time on very different projects. The Intelligent Campus program has been one of the really interesting one for me, because this is an area that introduced lots of opportunities, innovative ideas, and working with like a latest cutting edge technology. So while Steve focused on the program management aspect of the program, I will try to focus on more technical side and try to look at what we managed to achieve in the past few years, the lesson we learned, and some of the challenges. So I will start with putting some context, why we wanted to do what we did, and what was our thinking behind it, what was our approach. And I'm also going to talk about the effect of COVID-19, because I'm sure that affect many of you as well, that introduced lots of challenges. And very quickly talk about future development and some of the challenges that we face. Right, okay. Let's put some context behind this. So HE sector is changing significantly. Since the introduction of the higher fee, student expectation from the sector increased significantly. So we can see that HE become increasingly competitive. We can see student engagement, student kind of interaction is at the top of priority for all universities. They want their students to be more engaged. They want students to be more engaged, not only with the teaching material, but with services that are available in the campuses, things like library, shops, and other services. So satisfaction is the key these days. So the question is, how can we improve student satisfaction? What are the gaps? What are the limitations these days? So there are few interesting points when we're looking at gaps. For me, learning platforms currently are not up to the expectation. So if you look at most learning platform implementation, they're pretty much like a repository of content that are available for students. So that's not good enough. That's not really what our students expect us from delivering. And also, if you look at the future student, they grew up with lots and lots of digitally enabled technology. Like, let's look at the technologies that are available to a 15 years old. I mean, they are very different to the type of things that were available when I was 15 years old, right? So we have social media, smartphones, voice-enabled devices, chatbots, AR, VR devices. These are the type of technologies that students grew up with. These are the things that are part of their social life, part of their normal daily life. I don't know how many of you have like one of these Alexa or Google Home devices at home, but I have one, and they are really good. I can ask Alexa to do things like turning on and off some of my lights. I can ask her to turn up the temperature of the heating center, that type of thing. So if you think about it, these are the type of technologies that our future students grew up with. So they used to use in this technology. They used to use the interacting with this technology. So old-fashioned classroom experience is not fit for purpose. I mean, this picture that I have here is very similar to the classroom that I did my primary school. So you might be able to guess my age now, but that shows how things change in such a short period of time. So this type of structure is not fit for purpose. So students' expectation is we must be able to provide these digitally enabled services as part of their study. So when they are in campus or when they are out of the campus, doing remote teaching and that type of thing. One interesting study shows that those students that use AR, VR in their courses had a much better retention. So that's like to kind of backing up the fact that using this technology would bring a student's attention to the classroom, would improve the student satisfaction, because we will be effectively using the technology that they grew up with to provide the learning and teaching to them, right? Right, so what did we do? What we did in BCU, we look at our capabilities. We look at what services that we got available. And more importantly, we looked at our students' demography. We look at what are our students' expectations. So what type of courses we teach, and what are the demand, and what are the expectations. So what we did, we came up with a very kind of basic approach. At the time, we saw integration as the key. So, okay, in order to make these services available to students, in order to make students' life easier, we need to be able to integrate all these different services together. So what we did, we focused on creating that integration platform. We kind of focus on creating endpoints or API-based endpoint for our key business systems, things like students record system, virtual learning environment, building management system as well. So we focus on creating these API kind of services on top of those key business systems. And we took three simple, if you like, policy when we were developing this API. So the API must be developed and designed in a way that the data can be extracted from that system easily. Like let's take building management system as an example. So we want to be able to extract sensor information from the API. We want to be able to trigger some of the operation, right? So for example, through the API, you might want to push a content to a projector, yeah? So we want to trigger operation. And also we want to be able to capture event. For example, let's say that the temperature on a particular room went above a certain threshold, or number of people who occupy a room went above a certain threshold. So we want to be able to capture these events. So these are the three key, if you like, policies that we wanted these APIs to be able to kind of implement. And also, the most important thing is they have to be extensible, and they have to be accessible. It has to be easily accessible, so it has to be easily extendable. So what we done, we implement a service-oriented architecture. So we started this approach back in 2010. So we've been working on this for like 10 years now. So at the time, we started using Microsoft BizTalk Server. So it's a a very heavy-duty integration platform. Don't know how many of you used BStock in the past, but it's a very kind of heavy-duty, really resource-intensive, complex integration platform. But at the time, that was the best technology that was available to us. So we started using BStock Server. So BStock enabled us to create those event endpoints. It enabled us to create workflows or orchestrations. So we could easily create a business logic. For example, if a particular event happened, do this set of activities. So BStock was very good in creating those type of activities. And what we end up doing, we end up creating lots and lots of SOAP-based web services on top of our key business system, right? So in this diagram is an overly simplified high-level architecture of what we try to do at the time. So we have like key business system pushing or pulling data from the service bus. So we had various end user devices being able to pull information from the service bus and display that to the end user. Like from the intranet, the students were able to see lots of information, like information from building information model, that type of thing. We were able to push content into a screen from the service bus, and the mobile app that we developed, again, we're able to pull information from the service bus and display that to the student. So, and I have a bit more information around how we captured some of those lower level data. Like if you think about it, these days most sensors, they broadcast their data through a protocol called BACnet. So they use your existing networking infrastructure to broadcast information through BACnet protocol. So what we did, we create listener, which listen to those messages that been broadcast through BACnet, decode those information, and manage to get access to lots of really good data. So we could kind of see, get access to things like our utility consumption, things like heating, humidity, smoke alarm, that type of thing. So we managed to get access to lots and lots of good information. So this listener were listening to the information and capturing data periodically and put those information into the service bus. Yeah. And on the right hand side, we have data warehouse, and we had some listener in the service bus to pull the information and push it into data warehouse. So we managed to capture a history, if you like, of this data that been captured. So that give us a very good, if you like, history of information where we can do analytics. We can do really good work in terms of finding patterns, finding gaps, and that type of thing. So that's one example with the sensory information. Also, we managed to pull information from building information models. Like we use Revit to store building models. So we developed some bespoke component which extract data from Revit model, right? It extract data from Revit model, things like where are the fire exit, things like where are the toilets, that type of thing. Extract all this information, again, push them to the service bus, and data warehouse store them. And the same information was available through the intranet. Yeah? So we build all this architecture with the goal that the integration is the key and data is available. So some technical issues that we kind of found over the time was the system is heavyweight API calls. So lots, and if you are familiar with SOAP-based web services, they are heavyweight, if you like, XML files. So that introduced a massive traffic in our networks, right? So it's heavy duty XML files just keep passing around network. So for different systems to pick them up. We had some serious problem with compatibility. So we end up doing lots of bespoke coding to convert data or protocols from various systems to kind of the standard protocol that service bus can understand. So that introduced a massive overhead, if you like. And the last one, at the time, our architecture were not really working well with cloud services. So what we done in our latest version of the service bus, we move away from Microsoft BizDoc Server and we implement Azure Service Bus. So our approach is cloud first. So the entire integration platform were migrated into the cloud. So we start using cloud services for our service bus, automations, and orchestration. So since we've done that, that significantly improved the connectivity of various services. Right, so this is where we are. COVID-19 obviously introduced a big challenge, not only for us, but for all universities. So obviously when COVID started, we had a 100% remote teaching and learning, but few months after the pandemic, our university management decided to move into a 50 to 50 online face-to-face learning. And it's pretty much because of the type of courses that we teach. I mean, the courses that we teach are pretty much laboratory based. They do require an element of face-to-face, so we cannot deliver some of our courses without having that face-to-face. So they decided to go with a 50 to 50% face-to-face learning. However, in reality, it didn't happen because many students didn't really want to come to the campus. I mean, at the best, we got like 70% online learning and only 30 and maybe 20% face-to-face. So that introduced a massive impact on the quality of the teaching and learning. So we started asking some fundamental questions. So how can we resolve this issue? How can we kind of overcome this problem? So what we found out is now it's the demand more is on the blended environment where you want to create an environment where teaching and learning can happen both digitally and physically. You may have a percentages of your student in a physical classroom, and you may have a percentages of them remotely. So how can you resolve that problem? How can you bring your classroom equipment and how can you connect those equipment, those services into other systems? For example, how can you connect your video conferencing tool with your timetabling system? So when the students are attending a remote session, you can capture their attendances, right? So these are the type of things that we started to thinking about. And in order to resolve them, we start developing more integration. So now we are developing tighter integration between our timetabling, VLE, and video conferencing tool and video conferencing kit in order to achieve some of those goals. So some of the future development. So what we found is that integration is the key, data is the key. So in order to have a good service, intelligent, if you like, campus, you need to be able to integrate those services that are driving your building or your campus. You need to be able to integrate them into the other key business system. So integration is the key. Data is the key. You need to be able to extract data. You need to be able to make those data available to those who need to give to access it. So what we are going to do, we are going to continue investing in our integration, continue investing in our data platform, making sure more and more of those services are integrated. So we just launching a full network refresh program, and as part of that program, we are looking at some of the latest technology. Like we are looking at having our network capable of coping with more diverse type of protocols. We would be looking at implementing in AI to manage the traffic and that type of thing. We are making location aware switches as part of our network refresh. So things like broadcasting the location of devices would be built in to the platform. And these are the type of things that we want to do. We want to have more data to be accessible. We want more type of devices to be able to interact with the solution. So we will be also focusing our classroom experience, and the main objective of the classroom experience is how can we break the boundary between the physical and digital world. So how can we have good equipment integrated with other services that students who are attending the class virtually would have a similar experience as those students who are physically attending the classroom. So that is going to be a big challenge. So we will be looking at using AR and VR technologies for some of these scenarios to enable to have that seamless experience for the students. And in terms of interaction, we will be looking at voice-enabled devices. So things like Alexa, Google Home, and that type of thing. There are many universities already invested in those type of technology, and to be honest, we are a bit behind. So we will definitely start investing in those type of technology. So how students can use those voice or command-enabled devices to interact and get access to the services they need. So we covered the location-aware application. We very recently started experimenting with smart kiosks, which got like chatbot capability. So having smart kiosks around the campus where students can go and question any kind of question, so the kiosk can answer them. And the technology behind it is an intelligent chatbot which learn and provide answer to the students. And data analytics. So we already capture lots and lots of data. So how can we use those data to do things like reducing our utility bill? How can we find when we need to shut down our heating center, for example? How can we be more clever or intelligent about using some of our services? Like when do we shut down the projector? When do we switch them on? That type of thing. So we will be looking at data analytics, some of the pattern finding technique to find how can we optimize our usage. Some of the challenges worth mentioning that we faced in the past 10 years. The number one challenge for me is quality of the data. So it's worth mentioning that you can have the best integration platform, you can have the best technical team to integrate everything together, but if the quality of the data is not there, if data is not reliable, nothing is gonna work. So my recommendation is to fix data quality first before investing too much time and effort on creating those fancy integration. So let's take an example. You can invest a lot of time and effort, develop a fantastic chatbot which can answer questions, but that chatbot rely on data that you provided to it. If the data is not reliable, it will provide wrong information to your students and they will stop using it. So it would, the whole investment would be wasted. So data quality is the key. So another challenge that we face is like lack of standard APIs. So this is an interesting one, because in my personal opinion, those building services or those technologies that are related to managing buildings are a bit behind compared to some of the other sectors. I think they are a bit behind. So that's introduced some challenges. So as a result, we had to do a lot of bespoke coding, a lot of bespoke solution that kind of introduce maintenance burden. So it's just something to be aware of. Another thing that was an interesting challenge for us was this whole architecture requires significant investment that the university may not willing to consider. They may not see. They may say that, okay, we don't want to invest that much resources for you to deliver this service bus. So what we end up doing, we end up breaking down the architecture into phases and deliver it as part of big transformational program. Can give you one example. 24 months ago, we implemented a new ERP solution. As part of that ERP solution, we implemented a big chunk of our new enterprise service bus, which was implemented in cloud. So we didn't have a project specifically to migrate our service bus into cloud. We fit it into an existing program, and that was the only way we could implement it. We couldn't ask our university to give us time and resources to implement it as an independent project. So that's another challenge that might worth mentioning. And that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any question, any technical question. Yeah.
Very interesting run through there, so thanks. We've got a few questions here, so I don't know if you guys have been watching it in the chat, but maybe I'll go back. The one that I'm picking up here is there's one about the business case, which I think you've just addressed partly, Matt, in that final section there. And it was really a question here: what did the business case look like, and has there been a financial return? So effectively, how did you justify the investment? So
as I mentioned, we didn't really develop a business case specifically to develop a data and integration platform. What we end up doing, we made the integration and data platform as part of our IT strategy. And what we had integration and data delivered as part of each project, right? With example, when we were refreshing our student record system, we end up developing the bit that is related to a student record system. When we were delivering our ERP, we end up delivering part of the service bus. So we had to break it down. So we created these kind of policies that integration has to be done in this particular way, which comply with the overall architecture, and we tackle it slowly. That's why we started like 10 years ago, and we're still working on it, if you see what I mean. So if you want to tackle it as one program, you won't be able to get there. It's impossible to sell this as a project. So that's the challenge we had, and this is what we end up doing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was, I think it was Paul Dearlove. It sounds good to me. It sounds like by having an intelligent strategy, as it were, knowing where you're going to go, then you just build it into the incremental projects that take place, and therefore there is no substantial separate investment. It's just thinking clever and building it in as you go. So yeah, great stuff. A good approach. So
just to add to that, I think the way that we used to manage business cases when we first started on these schemes back in 2009 was not as sophisticated as it is now. So we didn't do things like benefits mapping. I saw some of the messages pop up in the chat bar. Our change management and change control has developed over the years, almost in parallel with the development of these schemes. So now when we put a scheme forward, we have to do quite a substantial business case that's then reviewed and goes through governance, etc. That happened back 10 years ago, but not to the same degree, with the same degree of scrutiny that it does now.
Thank you. I'll pick out a question here. We got one from Terry Mills. It says you mentioned middleware, and I think this was prior to Matt's talk. So actually, he just wanted to understand a bit more about the middleware. So it was a mixture of stuff you were designing yourself as well as off the shelf. But would you like to elaborate on that?
Sure. So middleware is like a product that is used for integration, right? So what we end up doing a hybrid model. So we obviously using off-the-shelf product. We initially use Microsoft Vista Server, but now we are using Azure services, Azure Service Bus, Azure Functions, Azure Logic App, and that type of thing. So these are off-the-shelf product. However, we end up doing a lot of bespoke development as well. And the reason is mainly lack of a standard API. So in many cases, we had to create our own APIs, because in order for the service bus to work as well as it should, you have to use a standardized protocols. You have to use what they call like a standardized schemas, right? If you just use the schema and protocols that been provided by the supplier, you would end up having with one-to-one integration. And one-to-one integration is not what you want. You want to have one-to-many integration. So the integration to be from the system to the service bus, not from system A to system B, if you like. So we had to introduce a massive chunk of bespoke coding because of lack of those standardized API and because of lack of a standardized schema. So this is something that you need to bear in mind. You will end up doing, and this is for me is one of the challenges. So over time, that would introduce a massive maintenance. So something to be aware of.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, there's I'd say it's an allied question here. There's one about how you go about specifying the systems when you put them in, because obviously you want to have data that you can extract. So maybe it might be open protocols or something like that. But how would you go about setting out the client's brief or the employer's requirements for the systems that are going in a new project?
I think it's definitely driven by the area of expertise. So it would be our estates team and their lead, but it would be a conversation with them. So when we opted for the system that we've chose for our new schemes in general, it was a conversation between estates, the PMs involved, Matt as the technical lead, to get what we required and what each of the different departments within the university required as well from the BMS, not just the estates team, but primarily the estates team. So it's a bit of a collaborative exercise.
Okay, good. I mean, you mentioned BACnet in that presentation. There's a question here from Adrian Schillerday, I think, about that employer's requirements that you can probably see yourself, but he's asking about whether you considered use of IFC or COBE in terms of interoperability in the database access. Yeah.
So I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
No, carry on.
Just in terms of COBE, I don't know much about that area, but I think the manager that led on this for BCU at the time, I think they looked at COBE standards, but that they diverted from them somewhat. I believe it's a much more bespoke approach to BIM. Matt, did you want to?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I think there is a question which you've pretty much answered about bespoke services, whether you had to develop in-house or whether you'd be able to identify external contractors to do it. So I don't know whether you've worked in partnership with other people or was it all
Right,
you've done
that's
it
an
inside?
interesting one. That's an interesting one. So whether you outsource it or in my experience, developing those API, you would need a good organizational knowledge. So it's not only about technical knowledge. So you can bring a contractor to obviously speed up developing those API. Yeah, you can certainly use that, but you want to retain the knowledge because you will end up quickly kind of evolving the API, if you like. You end up keep adding and changing. And in order to make those API work well, you need someone who knows your organization requirement well. And in my personal experience, a contractor won't be able to deliver that. So what I would say is, yes, you can bring a contractor to help you develop it as an extra hand, but you definitely want to take the leadership yourself in the organization, because otherwise you would lose the control and you would end up having with the system that work for a short period of time, but now you cannot maintain or develop it any further.
Oh, good. Okay. This is from Paul as well, Paul Dearlove, saying, how have you addressed change management, i.e. the BMS service contractor changes something and then the knock-on effects into the integrated structure that sits above that subsystem? How would you deal with that?
We've got change management in place and more. That's more what we would probably call change control. If there are any changes which affect the estate systems per se, then we work really closely and we've got a really good relationship with the estates team. And that's partly been built because we've been doing these schemes with them for the last 10 or so years. So in terms of process, it would be collaborative effort again. If, for example, we're just in the process of looking at upgrading our BMS systems, so the IT team and the estates team would work together on that.
There's a question here which is similar to one we discussed when we were kind of creating the webinar, as it were. It says here, have you found that the university is able to create and develop research projects on the back of this program? So presumably students in the faculty, I would imagine. So yeah.
Yeah, so this latest building as well is a good example of that, because we have a research department, an enterprise department, so they're one of the key stakeholders involved in the scheme. We've worked on various schemes. I mentioned looking at a system called LoRaWAN with one of the academics. Matt's worked closely with many of the academics in the computing school as well, haven't you, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. So we had some student helping us developing some proof of concept, if you like, working with some of the data. And what I'm really hoping to do in the near future is I would want us to be in a position where we can have open API available to our student in Faculty of Computing. So we do teach programming, so we have all this data available to us internally to IT. So why don't we make some of this data available to our students, so students can use real data for their courses? So that's what I'm hoping.
Okay, thank you. And another question here is where we perhaps retrospectively refitting buildings or adding buildings into your infrastructure, where you've got a building that's been installed in silos, so the systems haven't been installed with integration in mind. Is there an approach for bringing those in, or is it really retrofitting and starting from an integratable platform?
I think it depends what it is. So if it's more on the IT side, so the AV, for example, we've got AV standards and processes and protocols. So a way that we try to standardize our AV, as I mentioned, where we can. We've just got a lot of different use cases and instances of it, but we have got processes around that. With, for example, a building management system, that would be definitely led by the estates team, but we would work with them on that. In terms of BMSs, we're currently reviewing our BMS estate, or the estates team are, to look at rationalising and basically upgrading some of the old systems so that they can do some of the things that Matt's talked about as well, that they're more open and we can integrate into them, as well as providing that key functionality that they're there for. But have we kind of codified a process? We have, we've got a process we've got standards around everything through the technology stack, from the structured cabling right through to the end user devices, and we just apply that to the building, because they're also different, I guess, and also the users, because we've got 4 faculties and numerous schools.
And I suppose one more question is interesting in terms of the people that you're working with. Do you find that there's a skills gap there, or is there an increasing knowledge of this sort of technology in the supply chain?
Do you want to answer first, Matt? Or
sure, yeah. I mean, when we started, yes. I mean, these technologies that are related to building management were new to IT, obviously, because in IT we used to use like systems that work with certain standards, with certain protocols. I mean, BACnet for us at the time was very backward when we look at it. At the time, we used to use things like HTTPS protocol, standardized XML, SOAP-based, and that type of thing. But now I think technology evolved a lot. So you can see the vendors are picking up, and they started developing more accessible APIs, more accessible services. But to begin with, yes, it was a massive challenge. So it was a learning curve for those who were involved in the project. And I think it still will continue to be a challenge, because in order to develop a good system, it's not only about knowing how to use this standardized API, it's to know how the system works as well. I mean, until you understand what information is available in a BIM system or what information is useful, we can develop a good integration with the BIM system. So yes, it will continue to be a challenge, because I think in IT, especially in our organization, we're mainly working with business services, business application, things like more related to information management, student record system, VLE, that type of thing. When we're talking about building, when we're talking about services which are related to building, it's mainly we are looking at services that more closer to physical world, like interacting with sensors and that type of thing. There are a skills gap, yes, but it's better now. It's getting better now.
Oh, good. I mean, it's always a challenge. The more different systems you integrate, the wider and wider the field of knowledge that you have to understand. So from electrical to mechanical systems to audiovisual to security. So it's a huge body of expertise. So it does need a team to work on it for sure. There are some more questions coming in. There was one early question here which I could ask you. It was from Derek about how do you assess well-being, and I would suppose it would be also about student engagement and such like. So you're gathering this data Would you have metrics for well-being and student engagement and such like?
Yeah, so we do student engagement and student satisfaction, staff satisfaction surveys. So a lot of that is based on survey information, but we also look at things like help desk stats and other information. But mostly it's kind of questionnaire based.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's pretty much come to the end of the questions, and that was quite a wide-ranging set of questions. So, and there's a lot of very positive comments here from people. So I think it's proved to be a very informative and interesting presentation from both of you. So, so I'd just like to say on behalf of the Intelligent Buildings Group, thank you very much for presenting today, and encourage people to get involved in the group if they want to do more about intelligent buildings. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
for having us.
Yes,
Bye
thanks.
now.